have any messages to the listeners or any refugees from any country that might be listening to this right now?
For others like me and people with refugee backgrounds, I hope for more opportunities, more inclusion, and more recognition of our potential. We are not defined by what we have lost, but by what we can build. That belief gives me hope every single day.
That is a great message for anyone to motivate themselves and continue through any hardship they are going through right now.
Yeah, that was a really thoughtful message. Also wanted to add that grieving is also okay, and we have a right not to keep up with the positive thinking all the time. Some things need to be lived through. Hardships and experiences definitely shaped our personalities. We acquired some new skills and new knowledge, new approaches to having problems in life. Also, the way we comprehend things is very much different from that of a person that never had a similar experience. So we also can think of it as something that makes us stronger and different from others.
This is so wise, and I totally agree that as much as we should appreciate our past and all the things we've been through, is almost as important, if not more important, to give ourselves a minute to breathe in and out, relax and take time to recover when it might be hard and overwhelming. And it is also crucial to remember all the bright future and successes waiting for us. It just takes time and motivation and action from us to be able to achieve the life that we want for ourselves. To the University of Reading podcast. I'm a first-year economics and finance student and a refugee myself. He came from Kyiv, Ukraine, following the Russian invasion. This podcast is being recorded as a part of the Reading Refugee Week and in honour of all refugees displaced in the UK or anywhere else in the world. I'm delighted to be joined by Serzh and Yuliia today, who are from the Ukraine as well, and will be sharing their experiences today. In this episode, we'll cover our journeys to the UK and how it started, as well as how it is going now, challenges and achievements we've faced, myths about refugees, and finally, hopes for the future. Section 1. Yuliia, could you please tell me about yourself and how did you find the journey to the UK?
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'm Yuliia. I came to the UK about 3 years ago through the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Before the war I was a medicine student, but this changed quite quickly. When I first arrived, the first priority was to find stability. I focused on the ways to continue my education and try to adapt to this new environment. I chose to study psychology with neuroscience at the University of Reading, and I'm currently already a second-year student.
Wow, that's great. And how did you find transferring from medicine to neuroscience? Was it difficult at all for you?
Well, previously my field of interest was psychiatry. I even managed to practice a bit in the field as an assistant. So I'd say the information that modules include is not new to me, since I've studied medicine for 2 years before. But I really like how different the approach is, because back in Ukraine at our universities, we still have so many things from the USSR.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of the issues many students here face.
Yeah, and I quite like how here everything is designed and focused on your own perspective, the critical thinking and efficiency of all the tasks we discuss in the modules.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And what about how it started for you in Kyiv on the 24th of February when the invasion started, and how did you make your way to the UK?
Well, me and my family woke up at 5 a.m. from quite an unusual alarm. The bombings were quite close to our home. So we weren't really sure that we should leave straight away. We packed our stuff. No one believed what was happening. Everyone except for my mom was absolutely sure that the war is not going to start. This is the 21st century and this is not what's going to happen. So we weren't really prepared for that. First things first, we went to my grandma's house and picked her up. We also stayed there for a few days since there was a really nice shelter nearby. Then we went to the western part of Ukraine where our relatives lived, and they kindly accommodated us with a few spare bedrooms for the meanwhile.
That's really kind of them.
Yeah, it was. It would be a great time. We don't really see each other a lot, but I mean, in other conditions,
Yeah.
in different conditions, that'd be a great time.
Well, my story was similar to yours, as I'm from Kiev myself, and I did wake up the same morning and we left the following day as we were unsure of what was happening and what we were meant to do, and we planned our actions to move to Western Ukraine, and once the borders were open to Poland, we proceeded to move there and live there for another 4 months before settling in the UK with a sponsor family. And I've stayed there with them for a full 3 years from the start of the invasion, really, before moving to our own place with my mum last year. It's so nice to meet someone from my hometown here. And Serzh, as far as I remember, you're from Kherson, which is fairly close to Crimea as well as the Russian border. What was your life before the invasion and how did you find coming here?
When the war started, my mother, sister and I had nowhere to live. We stayed in Kherson until April. The city was quickly surrounded and street battles broke out. Tanks were firing into residential areas. One of the house on my street was hit and people died. Life under occupation was full of fear. Just speaking Ukrainian in public could be dangerous. Every trip to get food felt risky, and in April we decided to leave. It was a long and stressful journey, dozens of checkpoints, interrogations and phone checks. The worst were the FSB officers in black uniforms who searched and questioned me.
That's horrible to hear. And how did you find finally being able to move away from there? Was your journey smooth or were there any challenges?
There was a lot of challenges. For example, crossing the front line, and there was really a lot of checkpoints when officers check your phone, check your bags, and really trying to find anything that can tell that you are pro-Ukrainian.
What could that be? What were they looking to find?
For example,
Like a flag or?
like they check your social, Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram. They trying to find anything you wrote in messages and comments, or even they check your gallery for pro-Ukrainian photos.
Oh my god, sorry for asking, but what would generally happen to a person that would have something pro-Ukrainian in their social media during those checks?
They send you to prison and can torture you to death.
I cannot imagine what you've been through, and thinking of many people from Kherson and other occupied areas, as it's not the only city that was occupied, makes me terrified of how many people had to go through similar experience as you and that emotional stress. And what about the journey after you've left Ukraine?
Well, then we made it to Ukrainian controlled territory and then to Poland. There my mother found a volunteer who helped us apply for UK visas. It took 2 months before we could finally arrive in England. And at first I didn't think I could go to the university. My English was weak and I had no grades from here. But I studied at college, improved my English and eventually go into the university reading. For me it's not just like university, it's really fresh start.
There's such a unique story of how a person was able to move from occupation and moving from the front line away to Poland and finally being able to continue with their life and education and adopting to a new culture. How did you guys find the cultural differences and settling into the British environment?
That's a great question to be asked, honestly. Well, I wouldn't say I faced many difficulties communicating with British people. However, there were some misconceptions about Ukrainians that really made my life at least interesting. For example, when we first arrived in the UK and we met our sponsor family, the first question they asked me and my mom was, "Have you ever seen an electronic kettle?" And this was quite funny because they've invited an absolute stranger into their home and they didn't do like a background check or anything. Honestly speaking, during the first day, it made me feel like they see us as uneducated barbarians, and like it was surprising that they weren't scared of us.
Yeah, that I don't think many people realise that Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe and that we've got all the facilities that are available in the UK, even much more. For example, the fintech industry is much more developed in the Ukraine compared to the UK. And what about you, Serzh? What do you think about whether we Ukrainians have many things or very few things in common with British people?
I would say in personal communication we different because of the different temperaments. And what is normally for Ukrainians is impolite for English. For example, in Ukraine it's normally to immediately show emotions, to be direct in expressing feelings. For example, you can say to a person, "You have lost your weight," or "Why aren't you eating?" or "Are you sick?" out of concern.
Yeah, definitely. Or how we don't normally smile to a stranger unless we actually know them in person, which might come across as rude, but it actually is a cultural identity that we have. And how does the university tie up with your journey here?
As soon as I arrived, I didn't think that I would be able to go to uni, all because it's expensive, and I didn't go to school here. I don't have any grades, and as soon as I came here, my level of English was not enough to enter the uni. But I talked to my neighbors who advised me to think about studying here. It seems like a good idea to me. After spending 2 years in college and learning a little English, I was able to enter the university, and I think this place is a starting point that will help me to establish normal life here.
Yeah, that is definitely a great opportunity to be able to continue with your studies here, and especially improving a second language or even the third language that you speak is very crucial in your life. As for myself, it did take me a lot of time to sort of switch to the British educational system. However, I'm really glad and pleased to be able to study here and study what I enjoy.
Since I combine full-time study with self-employment and I'm financially independent, the university helped me a lot, and I quite like to compare the Ukrainian education with the British education, since I have picked up some nice things from both. Also, I quite correspond with the Serzh stories, since it is quite like with what my younger brother is currently dealing with. Because when we first arrived in the UK, I was the first one with like a bearable level of English. None of my relatives spoke English at all. And he entered school after staying here for just a few months. Now he's already done with his GCSEs and he has really, really good grades. Like, I'm so proud of him.
That is so impressive to be able to just, as a younger brother, and be able to pass GCSEs as well is quite an achievement. Section 2. And how did you find the day-to-day life as a refugee student here? What about your friendships? Did you find any friends that are the same nationality or any international students? And how did you find the support systems such as societies and other things?
A huge help in terms of this question is the fact that we have a Ukrainian society at the University of Reading, and I currently am a secretary of this society. When we first arrived and when we entered the university, I only had one friend, another Ukrainian girl going to this uni, but we quickly found the society on social media, and this genuinely changed the whole uni experience. Since people there were so supportive, no one judged me for my Eastern European facial expressions. I mean, like, it was really, really enjoyable to communicate with someone from the same cultural background. But also the international students environment is great because you can observe other people, you can learn something from them, from all the different cultures and all the different traditions. Honestly, I would say that international student environment is a bit more friendly, or at least it was for me. I mean, I'd say I struggled a tiny bit to adapt and form a meaningful friendship with British students. Not in a bad way, but there was a bit of a difference in the approaches towards friendship.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the Ukrainian society was a huge help in sort of bringing us all together. And since I went on the first event of the Ukrainian society, I definitely met loads more people, and we did go on some social events and to the Ukrainian Community Centre.
And also next year, we're not only going to have social events, we have also already planned ahead about inviting many fascinating speakers and having so much useful and meaningful events.
Yeah, definitely.
Before starting my studies, I met a few English mates in a local chat with whom I was supposed to live on the same floor. One of them turned out to have Ukrainian roots, and he helped me socialize with others. Later, it turned out that there were a lot of Ukrainians studying with me at the university, and two of them lived with me on the same floor. Studying is to be difficult for me, but it's still very interesting. I like that a lot of attention is paid to self-study here.
Yeah, definitely there's something that is different in the Ukrainian educational system, that pretty much everything that you need to study is given on the lectures. However, here there is so much more time and freedom for your own studying and reading as well. And what about any financial, mental health or other challenges that you faced? Personally, I really struggled to adjust my sleep when I just came to the UK. And another issue is I felt really anxious and stressed from any sound that it sounded any similar to an explosion or even a helicopter, as the first day was really heavy attack on Kiev with helicopters and planes. So yeah, that was one of my triggers for the first at least a year or maybe a year and a half, and I think I finally managed to overcome that. But what about you guys? How did you find those things going for you?
The planes thing is so true. I've already forgotten about it, but now that I think and try to remember, I felt exactly the same way. Another case was when I first went to the Westfield. That's like a huge building with many, many shops. I forgot how to call it.
Shopping mall.
Shopping mall, yeah. Thank you. So when I first went there, I was amazed, but in a bad way, with how many people were there. I felt crowded because when you stay for a long time, and we spent a few months in the Western Ukraine, all of the Ukraine was empty during the first year of the war. And I was so unused to the fact that there can be so many people in one place, and it's not because of the air alert and like they're just going around and shopping. Genuinely, I started suffocating and having a panic attack just because I went into the mall.
Yeah, definitely. The places where there are a lot of people just continuing with the life as normal when you had such a massive change in your life can be a bit overwhelming. And what about you, Serzh? Did you ever have that feeling at all?
Well, when I came here, it was difficult sometimes due to many factors: loneliness, the same uncertainty. At the beginning, it was not clear how long he could stay. There were problems with finding a job because they did not always want to hire someone with a poor knowledge of the language, and at first it was not easy financially either. Thanks to this, my host family who helped with everything.
Yeah, that is very kind of them to help almost strangers just for their feeling of compassion to your family. And what about your family? How did they settle here? Did they have any issues, or how did it all go for them?
Well, my host family helped me with settle here, and next week they helped me to apply for college and for English language lessons. Also, they found for my sister kindergarten, and yeah, they really helped a lot.
I'm glad that you found your sponsor family really helpful to start in this country. And did your sister at least enjoy the kindergarten here? Did you go to kindergarten back in Ukraine? Was it easy for her at all?
She was like year and a half when war started, and she spent mostly time with mother. And she started kindergarten here in UK, and now she's 5, and in September she's going to school.
That's amazing. That's really nice to hear. Section 3, Myths about refugees. So I'd like to talk about myths around being a refugee, and this is not only common in the UK but other European countries as well. For example, something that I was personally told and heard many times is that refugees take away the job opportunities from the nationals of the country and also sort of suck out the resources from the economy, as the government normally helps them to settle in, supports financially and sometimes with housing. What do you guys think about that? Do you agree with that statement at all?
I would say that it's really common belief that refugees are take resources or receive better treatment than British citizens. In reality, refugees often receive only the most basic support, enough to survive, not to thrive. For example, we don't have the same, some of the asylum seekers don't have access to benefits, and housing or job opportunities limited because they're not citizens, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. For example, Ukrainians were lucky to be able to access education and healthcare system on the same terms, on equal terms as British citizens or anybody else. However, for example, with the education, my qualifications from Ukraine were not acknowledged here fully, and I couldn't sort of continue from the third year, so I had to redo a year. Apart from that, a lot of jobs that I know many students here work are completely the same as any British student would work, so I don't think there is any better treatment in terms of that, as well as we enter the housing market and rent on the same terms as anybody else in this country. However, one difficulty my family had was that I didn't have a British sponsor or somebody who could back us up in case we couldn't pay the rent. So we had to pay 6 months in advance, which was the case. And did you have any similar stories to share?
Well, I've been working since I first arrived in the UK. At first it was just online tutoring, then I've started a small business, and then I started picking up part-time jobs in person here and there just to support myself and maybe help my family. I paid taxes the whole time and contributed to the economy, same as many Ukrainians I know, mostly everyone I know.
Yeah, I don't know a single person that is Ukrainian and doesn't have a job here or back in Ukraine and work remotely, to be honest. So I do disagree with that statement that we are just the resource takers, and I feel like there is so much more that we give back to the British community, and there were so many events where Ukrainians just came here and showed the gratefulness for all the support given from their sponsors and the government for starting the Ukrainian Homes for Ukraine scheme.
Oh, there's research supporting that we contribute to the economy more than we take from it.
Wow, I didn't know about that actually. That's an interesting point.
Also, I want to say that important to remember that we didn't choose to be a refugee. We didn't come here to take. We came here because we had no choice. And behind every refugee, like from Ukraine, from Palestine, from Syria, is a story of war, loss, and survival. What we need most is understanding and no suspicion.
That is certainly a clever point to keep in mind, as we all came here following some sort of conflict, and for most of us we didn't choose to be here, but we had to. And the fact that we all try to integrate and contribute as much as we can, I think is a massive sign of how Ukrainian communities being appreciative of the shelter we have given. And what about the sense of identity? Do you still identify yourself as a member of Ukrainian community? Do you still celebrate any Ukrainian holidays? And do you have any part of Ukrainian culture left with you here? Maybe a piece of clothing or some sort of thing that reminds you of home?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We celebrate every single holiday possible. We found an Orthodox church for Easter and some holidays before and after Christmas that we are used to be celebrating while we were back in Ukraine. Also, I have loads and loads of handmade accessories I've made in a Ukrainian thematic, and I try to join every single fair and market and event that is related to Ukrainian culture and fundraise. I think this is very important to remember who you are, because if you just assimilate and there is nothing left from your original nationality and mentality, then it's very hard to identify with anything anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I would certainly say that keeping that feel of identity and remembering who you are and who you were is so important these days, and it definitely helps me to ground and understand myself better and probably socialize as well. As you mentioned, lots of Ukrainian holidays, including Easter and the upcoming
Ivana Kupala?
Yes, yeah, that one, which I'm not sure we'll be able to celebrate all together, but I will certainly try to.
But there are so many Ukrainian clubs and communities here in Reading and in London, in both cities, and I believe in Oxford too, and they do so many events for the upcoming holiday, and they did for Easter. So this is a great opportunity to meet more people and connect.
And Serzh, were you able to express your culture here at all, and do you still celebrate those holidays that you had back at home?
Yeah, my family still celebrate Easter and Christmas in January. Recently we went with my flatmates to Oxford to celebrate Easter, and also I express my culture through cooking. We sometimes prepare traditional dishes like borscht and vareniki. Also, I can explain the meaning like behind food, the songs, and our costumes and celebration. And this reminds me where I come from and gives others a chance to learn about Ukraine.
Yeah, definitely. Cooking your own cultural food, for example, borscht that you've mentioned, truly makes me feel connected with my culture. And I've actually made that dish for my sponsor family, which they really liked and appreciated, and we sort of shared the best of the two cultures really, which was great, and I really enjoyed that.
What was the most common reaction you guys seen when you were trying to introduce Ukrainian? I mean, like, not boorish or anything highly tolerable, but like something a bit more niche and specifically Ukrainian.
That is a very interesting question. I've actually been to one of the Ukrainian cafes in London, and it was sort of a fusion of British cuisine as well as the Ukrainian, as there were two sort of menus, and therefore there were British people as well as Ukrainian people or other nationalities there. And I remember, for example, sirniki. That is a very common dish that we have in Ukraine, which is sort of a dessert which made out of cottage cheese. And I remember one of the people there coming up to the waitress and telling them that the texture of the cheese feels like that is wrong or went wrong or out of date. And she did spend sort of 10 minutes explaining that cottage cheese is actually sort of a dairy product that is meant to have that texture. And she appreciated that. No, everybody likes that texture, but it's very common in Ukraine, and that was actually my favorite dish from my childhood, and I love having that with some jam and condensed milk.
Yeah, that's very good.
Also, I just want to say that British people were surprised not of quality of food, of amount of food, because basically they cook just starter, main, and dessert. But we Ukrainians like tradition to cook 12 dishes on a Christmas.
Yeah, that is actually true. We do make 12 different dishes, and normally every member of the family arrives, and this is such a nice tradition, and I like that about our culture.
But it's not that strict though about Christmas. I remember when we didn't plan on having many guests, we just had like cut vegetables or like some cheese or, I mean, like genuinely just a sliced food on a plate that would be counted as a dish, just so that we still follow the tradition, but we don't have to stuff ourselves with so much food.
Yeah, definitely. And something that is concerning me recently is the media attention to Ukraine. What is your opinion on the appearance of Ukraine in the media? And since the full-scale war invasion was going for 3 years, how do you think media reacted at the start and how it progressed over time?
When the war started, Ukraine was everywhere. Flags, headlines, fundraising. But attention faded, and that really hurt because the war didn't stop and the suffering didn't end. No one wants to hear about Ukraine anymore. It's just no longer trending.
That is definitely so sad and hurting for me to see that media attention is just not there while it didn't get any better, as you said, since the 24th of February. And I think the reason for that is that the news about Ukraine is not worth attention and not selling anymore to the media and the large newspaper companies.
Well, that's unfortunate. Ukrainian channels are still broadcasting the news to keep us up to date with the conflict. From the first glance, this is a nice thing to be able to make sure that your close ones are safe even when back at home, but observing, like just simply looking at it from afar, brings this unbearable feeling of guilt that you are here and you're safe, and you are thinking about your university assignments, your boss giving you hard tasks to do, whereas there is your father or your grandmother back in Ukraine, hearing all the fire alerts, seeing all the bombings and all the destruction. This is very hard to deal with. Do you guys have any similar experiences?
Well, my grandmother have lived with us like year and a half, and then she decided to go back to Ukraine because she has some health problems, and our house had been destroyed probably 3 months ago, and she went to her sister in Western Ukraine. I feel guilty because I'm here in UK in safe place, and my grandmother lived with us most of this time, and she decided to go back to Ukraine, and now in Ukraine she hear of all this air alarms, air raids, bombing and everything on news.
How do you feel about that, Serzh? And do you get to communicate often with your grandmother?
Well, so it was her decision because she not received the right medical treatment here, but I'm still worried about her. I call her like 3 times, 4 times in a week, as much as I can. So we keep in contact.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, as I also have my grandmother back in Ukraine, and the difficulty I experienced is that often, very much not recently, but in the past, there were problems with electricity and my grandma not being able to even charge her phone, and I wasn't able to contact her for days or even weeks, which was really stressful for me and had a huge impact on my social and academic life. Section 4, Achievements and Hopes for the Future. And let's switch on to the more positive side of things. Have you guys had any successes recently since you arrived to the UK? Whether it was academics, personal milestones, or any projects you were involved with? Yuliia, I know that you were involved in a small business and setting up your own company. How did that go? And were there any successes that you can share with us today?
Well, to start with, we all learned to survive in a new country. That's a huge success.
Yeah,
I think.
definitely.
In terms of having a business, I started getting orders from all around Europe and the US. I was so happy about it because previously I've only been cooperating with the UK retailers and only got online orders around the UK. That was a huge step for me. Also, I mean, like, this is my second university. This feels like a huge thing. We're starting everything from scratch, and I think you can relate. Anastasiia.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. But again, we're still thriving. We're doing great. That's a big thing.
I would say that my biggest success is to get into university here, because just working somewhere in restaurant for 10 hours per day for minimum wage did not suit me well.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that we have to work to be able to provide for ourselves and be able to grow up so quickly, because I was underage when I came here and I had to deal with all the paperwork and for my mum and for myself.
Yeah, that's so relatable.
Yeah, for sure. And as for myself, I think I've done so well so far with getting my English knowledge to a certain level where I can work, and success in my studies, as well as the upcoming internship that I've secured for the summer. So yeah, I believe those personal milestones for me have been good so far, and I am quite proud of myself in terms of that. I'm so pleased to hear that we're all being proactive and had some certain personal successes that we can share, and just be proud of ourselves, how we did in a new country and achieved so much in such a relatively short period of time. And what about any future successes that you would like to achieve? Is there anything that brings you hope, or you hope to accomplish in the nearest future?
My dream is to help veterans with brain trauma reintegrate into society. And I want to develop evidence-based rehabilitation programs that don't just label people, but restore them. Therefore, I'm doing everything I possibly can to one day achieve this.
This is such a great mission to have, and I hope that you do achieve it in as soon as possible.
As someone who came to UK as a refugee, I carry with me not just a personal story of resilience, but also a deep motivation to contribute to the society that welcomed me. My aspirations for the future are rooted in public service. I want to work in politics, law enforcement, or journalism, fields where I can stand up for people who are unheard or undeserved.
I'm glad to hear that after all you guys been through, you still have some remaining hope and some things that you've already achieved, and you want to multiply that in the future and fire through and achieve even more. Do you have any messages to the listeners or any refugees from any country that might be listening to this right now?
For others like me and people with refugee backgrounds, I hope for more opportunities, more inclusion, and more recognition of our potential. We are not defined by what we have lost, but by what we can build. That belief gives me hope every single day.
That is a great message for anyone to motivate themselves and continue through any hardship they are going through right now.
Yeah, that was a really thoughtful message. Also wanted to add that grieving is also okay, and we have a right not to keep up with the positive thinking all the time. Some things need to be lived through. Hardships and experiences definitely shaped our personalities. We acquired some new skills and new knowledge, new approaches to having problems in life. Also, the way we comprehend things is very much different from that of a person that never had a similar experience. So we also can think of it as something that makes us stronger and different from others.
This is so wise, and I totally agree that as much as we should appreciate our past and all the things we've been through, is almost as important, if not more important, to give ourselves a minute to breathe in and out, relax and take time to recover when it might be hard and overwhelming. And it is also crucial to remember all the bright future and successes waiting for us. It just takes time and motivation and action from us to be able to achieve the life that we want for ourselves. Thank you so much, Yuliia and Serzh, for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and the discussions we had are so personally important to me, as we were able to address some of those issues that are not normally addressed, such as survivor's guilt and the misconceptions about refugees that are so specific to your stories.
Thank you very much, Anastasiia, for inviting us. That was a great time we've had together, and thank you for preparing all of this so thoughtfully, and for all of the questions and the respect with you treated us today.
Thank you, Anastasiia, for the invitation. For me it was important to express my thoughts about war and how I settled here.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope our listeners today learned a bit more about ourselves, as well about Ukraine, that is currently struggling with attracting the attention of the general media. And the final message from me, I'd like to encourage everybody for the solidarity and to stand with not only Ukrainian refugees but all the refugees across the world, as you never know what the person might be going through. And the resilience the Ukrainian refugees especially have shown in the past years has been amazing, and I'm so proud for us. And yeah, I hope these stories made some impact on somebody on the other side of the headphones. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!